Welcome to the IFIC Foundation's 2017 Food and Health Survey Health Professional Webcast. This module will review findings from our recent survey with a special focus on important takeaways for a variety of health professionals. If you are a registered dietitian nutritionist or a dietetic technician registered, you can receive continuing education credit for this course. Just watch this recording, fill out the form on the link below, and download a CPE certificate. All of the instructions for this are available on the page below. Also, you can join the discussion on Twitter using the hashtag #DietaryDisconnect or send us your questions about the survey by tweeting at Food Insight. I'm Liz Sanders, Director of Research and Partnerships at the International Food Information Council Foundation, and I'll be walking you through the 2017 Food and Health Survey results. Before we dive into survey results, allow me to give you some background on the IFIC Foundation. The International Food Information Council Foundation is dedicated to the mission of effectively communicating science-based information on health, food safety, and nutrition for the public good. Our organization is primarily funded by companies from the food, beverage, and agricultural industries. Consumer research is a key component of our foundation's mission to communicate science-based health, food safety, and nutrition information. As communicators and health professionals, it's important to understand the perceptions and beliefs that drive behavior so that we can help consumers make healthy, well-informed choices for themselves and their families. The Food and Health Survey is one important tool through which we, as health professionals, can better understand the consumer, and in doing so, more effectively communicate about food and nutrition. Here are the topics we'll be covering in today's webcast. After briefly covering the survey's background and methodology, we'll uncover how Americans define the term healthy, both in terms of their own health and the food they eat. Then, we'll look to the complex landscape of food information that Americans encounter on a daily basis. How do the sources that Americans use for nutrition information shape their behaviors? Furthermore, do Americans doubt their choices as a result of the information they encounter? After examining aspects of food confusion, we'll unpack consumer perceptions of processed foods, and then go beyond the box to examine consumer perceptions of food safety and production. This is the International Food Information Council's 12th Annual Food and Health Survey. This ongoing investigation into the beliefs and behaviors of Americans examines the food information landscape, health and diet, food components, food production, sustainability, and food safety. This is an online survey of 1,000 Americans ages 18 to 80. The survey was conducted between March 10th and March 29th, 2017, and took approximately 22 minutes to complete. We indicated significant trend changes from 2016 using up and down arrows throughout the presentation. The results of the survey were weighted to ensure that they are reflective of the American population ages 18 to 80, as seen in the 2016 current population survey. Specifically, we weighted by age, education, gender, race, ethnicity, and region. The survey was conducted by Greenwald Associates using Research Now's consumer panel. This year marks our first collaboration with the AARP Foundation. In addition to the general population survey, we oversampled adults between the ages of 50 and 80. This resulted in an oversample report with data from 1,000 Americans in this age range, giving us the ability to draw out interesting differences between subgroups in this population. The full report is available at foodinsight.org/FHS. This PowerPoint highlights the notable subgroup differences along the lines of age, gender, ethnicity, and region. The most interesting differences in this report lie along income lines. Low-income older adults use nutrition information differently, have different purchase drivers, and they have more barriers to healthy eating than older adults with higher incomes. These income differences are a large focus of the report and would be especially helpful for any health professional who has an interest in addressing health disparities. More generally, the report shows some significant differences between older adults and the rest of the population. Overall, older adults have a pretty stellar nutrition report card. Older adults are highly motivated to achieve better health and are more likely to adopt healthy eating behaviors compared to their younger counterparts. Older adults also use fewer information sources to decide which foods to eat or which foods to avoid. In fact, they use about half as many as millennials. It's also notable that older adults use online sources less frequently than younger consumers. Though older adults are just as likely as younger consumers to recognize conflicting information about what to eat and what to avoid, this group is also less likely to doubt their food choices as a result of that information. Older adults are also more likely to be able to link their most desired health benefit to specific foods or nutrients. We will be calling out some of these differences between older adults and the general population in the recording today. But, as a reminder, these are all outlined in our full oversample report on foodinsight.org/FHS. Healthy is often at the heart of our discussions around food. Still, how Americans think about healthy in the context of what we eat remains hotly debated. Americans tend to have a pretty positive view of their health. We found that nearly 2/3 of Americans rate their health as very good or excellent, while less than 10% report that they are in fair or poor health. On the right, you can see a breakdown of health status by BMI. Americans typically view themselves as being in good health, but what does that mean to them? We found that the most popular definition of healthy was a lack of health problems. About 1 in 7 reported that being healthy meant eating healthy, and a similar number of respondents said that being healthy meant being fit or in good shape. We also asked consumers how they define a healthy food. We presented them with the list of attributes below and asked them to rank their top 3. High in healthy components or nutrients was the most highly ranked attribute of a healthy food, followed by free from artificial ingredients, preservatives, or additives. So we know that Americans primarily define a healthy food by the healthy components that it contains. So which components do Americans view as healthy? Vitamin D, fiber, and whole grains were viewed as healthy by the vast majority of our respondents. We also found that whole grains, probiotics, fortified foods, and unsaturated fats were viewed as healthy by significantly more of our respondents than last year. Interestingly, there are also age differences in the perception of health for these components. 47% of Americans ages 18 to 34 say that animal protein is healthy, while just a quarter, about 26%, of those ages 65 plus say that animal protein is healthy. We also examined which attributes Americans valued in a healthy eating style. We asked consumers, how do you define a healthy eating style? And asked them to rank their top 3 attributes, just as we did with a healthy food. We found that the right mix of different food groups was the top attribute of a healthy eating style, and that those ages 65 plus were more likely to say that this was their top attribute. Before we move on to the next slide, take a quick moment and think about the health goals of your clients or patients. Do you know which health benefits they are most interested in getting from the food they eat? Chances are that depending on the ages of your clients or patients, this answer will differ. Americans are looking for many benefits from the food they eat. We asked Americans, what benefit are you most interested in getting from food? We found that weight loss/management was the top health benefit, followed by cardiovascular health. Interestingly, consumers under the age of 50 are more likely to choose weight loss or weight management as their top health benefit. Around the age of 50, cardiovascular health takes precedent as the top health benefit. Overall, Americans say that they are taking many steps to eat healthy and understand the importance of expert nutrition guidance. Americans also report use and familiarity with nutrition education tools like USDA's MyPlate. As I mentioned, Americans do take many steps to be healthy. The blue bar indicates the number of Americans that began doing the step in the past year, while the green bar indicates the number of Americans who have been doing the following action for more than a year. Drinking more water to stay hydrated and making small changes to achieve an overall healthier diet were the top steps that Americans were taking to eat healthier. Women are more likely than men to be making an effort to stay hydrated and to consume smaller portions. As health professionals, we know that it takes a lot of motivation to turn any new healthy eating behavior into a habit. Take a look at the blue bars indicating the number of Americans who began making these healthy changes in the past year. Now think about your clients or patients. What typically motivates them to take action and make healthy changes to their diets? We followed up with our respondents who began doing any of these behaviors in the past year and asked what motivated them to take action. We found that internal motivators were more likely to drive these healthy habits than external motivators. I wanted to lose weight was the top reason that Americans cited that they had made the healthy eating change in the past year. 1 in 7 Americans say that they are following a specific eating pattern or diet. Out of these Americans, unbranded diets seem to be the most popular. These include diets like being paleo, vegan, vegetarian. About 5% said that they were following a branded diet. Americans see expert guidance for nutrition to be important for all stages of life, but this importance slightly dips around adolescence, young adulthood, and adulthood. Women are more likely than men to say that it's important for all life stages. The majority of Americans report using nutrition information, like calorie counts on menus, when eating out. College-educated Americans and women are more likely to say that they use the nutrition info. Most consumers also report having seen MyPlate. 65% said that they at least have seen the graphic, while nearly half say that they know a lot or a fair amount about the MyPlate graphic. Americans most commonly see MyPlate at doctors' offices and schools. Unsurprisingly, the number of Americans reporting that they have seen the graphic at a school drops off between ages 18 and age 50. Before we jump into this section, consider this question. As a healthcare professional, which sources do you trust to get information on nutrition? Now think about where you get the majority of that nutrition information on a day-to-day basis. Are these trusted sources the same as the sources that you rely upon, or are they different? Also, are these the same sources where your clients and patients get their nutrition information? Now let's look at this aspect of food confusion. Americans turn to friends and family to help us guide our food choices, but see others, like dietitians and health professionals, as the most trusted sources. This disconnect between the sources we trust and the sources we rely upon may be leading to a glut of conflicting nutrition information. We asked our respondents, how much would you trust information from the following sources on which foods to eat and which foods to avoid? We found that 2/3 have high trust in advice from conversations with registered dietitian nutritionists and with healthcare professionals. Only about 1 in 5 said that they trusted information from friends or family. Knowing who consumers trust for nutrition information is only one part of the puzzle. Conversations with personal healthcare professionals, along with being a heavily trusted source, are also one of the most frequently relied upon. But let's take a look at friend or family member. This source was only trusted by about 1 in 5 respondents, but is about the second most commonly relied upon source. Men were more likely to get information from friends and family members than women. Also, millennials were more likely to say that they were a top source of information than boomers. Let's look at some of the effects of the influence of friends and family members on our eating patterns. We know that only about 1 in 7 Americans follow a specific eating pattern or diet. Friends and family members are cited as the most common source of information that influenced Americans to choose a specific eating pattern or diet. So here we see that although friends and family members may not be a highly trusted source, they are a highly influential source when it comes to our eating patterns. We also see that information from friends and family members is impacting Americans' opinions on low-calorie sweeteners. 1/3 said that a friend or a family member influenced their opinion change on low-calorie sweeteners, while only 1 in 7 cited a conversation with a healthcare professional. Friends or family members are also a commonly cited source in influencing opinion change on added sugars. Friends and family members don't only influence Americans' opinions on nutrition, they also influence our opinions on food safety. Friend or family member is the second most commonly cited source for food safety concerns, behind news articles or headlines. This graph maps out trust versus reliance, with trust on the y-axis and reliance on the x-axis. As you can see, sources like conversations with registered dietitian nutritionists and healthcare professionals are very trusted. Friends and family member, although not as trusted as healthcare professionals, are just as heavily relied upon. It's safe to assume that we're getting different information from our friends and family than we are from healthcare professionals and registered dietitian. So it's not surprising to find that 8 in 10 of our respondents reported that they hear a lot of conflicting information about what foods to eat and what foods to avoid. Half of those who recognize this conflicting information say that they doubt the choices that they're making as a result. Let's turn now to look at how some of this doubt and confusion is affecting our behaviors. We know that many Americans want health benefits from food, but we also found that they're struggling to understand which foods are associated with the specific benefits. This dietary disconnect may be fueled, at least in part, by the abundance of conflicting nutrition information. Fewer than half of Americans can link their most desired health benefit with a specific food or nutrients. For example, for those who wanted weight management as their top benefit, 60% could not name a food or nutrient associated with weight management. The same goes for cardiovascular health. About 49% could not name a food or nutrient associated with that. Increased energy and digestive health also saw about half of the population who was interested in those benefits not being able to name a food or nutrient associated with them. We also see this dietary disconnect playing out in the number of Americans who are sure of their caffeine intake. Fewer than 1 in 5 know how much caffeine they consume on an everyday basis. Also, a large proportion of Americans, nearly 50%, are not sure if naturally occurring caffeine has the same effect as added caffeine. Before we move along to other manifestations of this so-called dietary disconnect, take a moment to consider this question. What mental shortcuts, if any, do you use to compare the healthfulness of certain products at the grocery store? For example, would you think that a fresh food would be more likely to be healthy than a canned food? Would you think the same even if the two products had identical nutrition facts panels? Most importantly, do you know of any mental shortcuts that your patients or clients use to easily compare the healthfulness of certain products? We see from this question that factors beyond the nutrition facts panel are creating a health halo around some foods. Factors like form, place of purchase, length of ingredients list, among others, affect the perceived healthfulness of nutritionally identical products. We gave our respondents a scenario where two products had the exact same nutrition facts panel, but differed according to certain factors. The respondents were asked if one product was likelier to be healthier or if they were both equally healthy. A product with a short list of ingredients was viewed as likely to be healthier than a product with a long list of ingredients by nearly 3 times as many respondents. Similarly, a fresh product was viewed as likely to be healthier than a canned product by nearly 6 times as many respondents. Perhaps most interestingly of all, we find that even if the place of purchase affects perceived healthfulness of a product. A product purchased at a natural food store was viewed as likely to be healthier than a product purchased at a convenience store by nearly a third of respondents. This is nearly 3 times the number who have viewed the convenience store purchase to be healthier. This abundance of conflicting nutrition information also leads to divided perceptions on sweeteners. Opinions on both low-calorie sweeteners and added sugars have grown more polarized in the past year, with friends and family driving these opinions. In 2017, more consumers are linking sugars to weight gain. We asked which source of calories is most likely to cause weight gain, and nearly 1/3 of Americans, up from 25% in 2016, say that sugars are the most likely to cause weight gain. Only about 1 in 5 Americans say that all sources contribute equally to weight gain. In 2017, we also found that the majority of our respondents are trying to limit or avoid sugars, with more than 3/4 saying that they've made an effort to do so. Common actions taken to avoid or limit sugars include drinking water instead of caloric beverages and eliminating certain foods and beverages from the diet. We found that more people are trying to consume smaller portions and use low-calorie sweeteners instead of adding sugar this year compared to last year. About 6 in 10 of our respondents view added sugars negatively. Most interestingly, however, we found that opinions of added sugars have grown increasingly polarized over the past years. Of those who have a positive opinion of added sugars, many report that their opinion has become more positive in the past year. And the same goes for those who have a negative opinion on added sugars, with many saying that their opinion has shifted to become more negative since 2016. The split on sweeteners continues when it comes to preference. When asked which of the following would you use to sweeten foods or beverages, consumers were split on whether they would choose low or no-calorie sweeteners, sugar, or do not use either, with about a third saying that they would choose each option. More people use low or no-calorie sweeteners because they try to avoid the alternative or because of their calorie content, while more people use sugar because they prefer the taste or they believe the alternative is not good for you. Interestingly, those who have a non-communicable disease were more likely to prefer lower no-calorie sweeteners than sugar. Low-calorie sweeteners are primarily sought after for specific benefits. Half or more who prefer low-calorie sweeteners say they help with sugar and calorie consumption, or they help them lose or manage their weight. Opinions on low-calorie sweeteners have also polarized over the past year. Like added sugars, opinions on these sweeteners have become more polarized in both directions. Of those who have a current positive opinion of low or no-calorie sweeteners, many say that their opinion has become more positive in the past year. While out of those who have a negative opinion of low-calorie sweeteners, many say that their opinion has become more negative since 2000. Let's turn now to look at consumer perceptions and behaviors when it comes to processed food. The definition of processed foods for many consumers is arbitrary. Considerations like organic versus conventional, homemade versus store-bought, and fresh versus frozen all seem to affect our individual definitions of processed foods. Consumers use many different pieces of packaging information to decide which foods to buy. Expiration date is the most commonly consulted piece of packaging info, with more than 70% saying that they consult this regularly when deciding whether or not to purchase a food or beverage. Nutrition Facts Panel is second, with about 50% saying that they consult this regularly. Boomers are more likely to consult information such as expiration date, ingredients list, and brand names, while low-income consumers are more likely to look for statements about health benefits than higher-income consumers. Also, it's notable that Hispanic consumers are more likely to consult a variety of packaging information. While some consumers remain unconcerned about packaging functionality, many place a high importance on aspects of the packaging function. For many consumers, resealability is the top important aspect of packaging functionality, while ease of opening is important for many, especially older consumers. Hispanic consumers are more likely to see all aspects of packaging as highly important, with the exception of resealability. This question gives some insight into consumers' definition of processed. We presented our respondents with a variety of carrot-based products on a spectrum from minimally to highly processed. Store-bought carrot cake, carrot soup, and store-bought carrot baby food were the only 3 items viewed to be processed by more than half of our survey respondents. Perhaps the most interesting thing we can glean from this question is that organic products are viewed as processed by far fewer consumers than conventional products. For example, half as many consumers highlighted organic frozen carrots as processed than did frozen carrots. Despite varying definition of processed foods, consumers see many reasons to consume them. Most reasons for consuming processed foods or packaged foods center around convenience. Over 3/4 consume processed or packaged foods because they fulfill certain functions that make life easier, like convenience, time saving, ease of preparation, and the fact that packaged foods can be consumed on the go. Understanding how consumers would spend extra money or time gives you a valuable glimpse into their priorities. It can be especially interesting to see how health-related factors weigh out against other priorities. If given an extra $100 a month, most consumers would save or invest the money. About 1/4 would likely spend it on groceries. Americans under 50, those with less than a college education, lower income, Hispanic, and those with children are most likely to buy groceries with the extra money. If given an extra 4 hours a week, most Americans would spend it with friends and family. Physical activity is a close second. Over half of consumers in excellent or very good health would spend the time being physically active, while significantly fewer consumers in fair or poor health said the same. Supermarkets are the most common location where Americans purchase food, with about 80% of our respondents saying they shop at supermarkets at least sometimes. Superstores were a distant second, while even fewer report shopping for groceries at natural food stores, convenience stores, or drugstores. Higher income consumers, those who earn over $75,000 per year, are more likely to shop at warehouse or discount clubs, while lower income consumers are more likely to shop at convenience stores. Taste, price, and healthfulness, in that order, are the top 3 factors that drive food purchasing. The same has been true since the beginning of our survey in 2006. The number of consumers saying that price, healthfulness, and sustainability have a great impact on their food purchasing has dropped slightly since 2016. Still, women are more likely than men to cite these factors as top drivers of their purchasing. Also, note that millennials are the age group most likely to say that convenience is a top driver. When it comes to what Americans eat and why, considerations go far beyond the factors that traditionally drive purchases, like taste, price, and convenience. How a food is produced, where it comes from, and the perceived corporate values of the company that manufactures it have a big impact on food choices. Sustainability is important for about half of consumers. The number of consumers saying that sustainability is very important has dipped slightly since 2016. We know that sustainability means a lot of different things to different people, so naturally we wanted to know which aspects of sustainability consumers valued the most. Reducing pesticide use, conserving the natural habitat, and conserving farmland over multiple generations were the most popular aspects of sustainability among our respondents. Considerations related to sustainability in food production affect what Americans purchase at stores and restaurants. About 1/3 regularly purchase food because it is labeled as no added hormones or steroids, natural, or raised without antibiotics, while about 1/4 regularly purchase food because it is labeled as non-GMO or organic. Americans are less likely to eat at a restaurant due to any of these considerations. There is a big difference among age groups when it comes to purchasing food because it's labeled as organic or choosing organic restaurants. Millennials are much more likely to opt for organic, both in restaurants and market. Several food production factors affect Americans' purchasing decisions. Recognizing the ingredients listed on the package is cited as at least somewhat important for over half of Americans. Boomers care even more about recognizing the ingredients than millennials, while lower-income consumers are more likely to say that the number of ingredients on the package is important. Note that about 1/3 of consumers say knowing that the manufacturer shares my values is an important purchase-related factor. Out of those 1 in 3 consumers that feel it's important for a food company to share their values, food attributes are top of mind. Nearly half of these values-driven consumers care about values related to the food itself. These are considerations like being healthy, being natural, or the food being low in certain components like sugar. About 1/4 cite characteristics related to the company, like honesty, integrity, and fair trade, as their top values, while about 1 in 7 cite environmental consideration as part of their values. Americans are split over what trade-offs they are willing to accept for a product with no artificial ingredients. When asked to choose between two options, option A, which has artificial ingredients but tastes great, and option B, which has no artificial ingredients but tastes half as good as option A, consumers were 50-50 overall. Men were more likely than women to opt for the better tasting option with artificial ingredients. The same food production factors that we covered earlier also affect restaurant choice, but a little less so. About 4 in 10 say that knowing where the food comes from is an important consideration when choosing a restaurant. Those with children in the home were much more likely to say that it's important to know where the food comes from than those without children. About a quarter of Americans think it's important to choose a restaurant that is committed to reducing food waste. So far, we've focused on Americans' food values as they relate to sustainability and food production. But that's only part of the picture when it comes to values. Americans' food values are also reflected in their perceptions of the safety of the food supply and in their food safety concerns. Confidence in the safety of the U.S. food supply is down slightly from last year. Still, nearly 2/3 of Americans say they are at least somewhat confident. Boomers also tend to be more confident in the safety of the food supply than millennials, with about 1/3 of millennials saying that they were not confident, as opposed to only 1/4 of boomers. Foodborne illness from bacteria was ranked as the top food safety concern again in 2017. A significantly larger number of respondents chose carcinogens or cancer-causing chemicals in food as their top concern in 2016 as compared to 2017. Those who say that there is a lot of conflicting information about the foods they should eat and those that they should avoid are more likely to cite carcinogens as one of their top 3 food safety issues. About 4 in 10 report that they have changed their eating habits due to their concerns about their top food safety issue. Those who were not confident in the safety of the food supply were much more likely to make a change based on their top food safety concern than those who are confident in the safety of the food supply. Also, those who have high trust in news articles and headlines were more likely to make a change than those who have low trust for that information source. This may be related to the fact that news articles and headlines are a top-cited source for information on all top food safety concerns. Also, many people get information on their top food safety concerns from news articles or headlines, but only those who trust those headlines as a source of information on what foods to eat and avoid may be more likely to change their eating habits as a result. Note also the influence of friends and family as a source of information for all these top food safety concerns. Though GMOs are not a top food safety concern compared to issues like foodborne illness, many reasons why people seek non-GMO labels fall along the lines of health and safety. We mentioned in a previous slide that about 1 in 4 Americans regularly seek out the non-GMO label when shopping for foods. Out of these consumers, 73% seek non-GMO labels because they believe that these foods are healthier, safer, or better for the environment than conventional foods. Also, it's notable that 1 in 5 say that they do not have enough information on GMO foods or that they are unsure about GMO foods. This highlights a real opportunity for health professionals to meet this consumer uncertainty with accurate science-based information on GMOs. To wrap up our overview of the 2017 Food and Health Survey webcast, let's go over some key takeaways for health professionals. 8 in 10 Americans recognize that there's conflicting information about what to eat and what to avoid. And about half of these Americans that recognize that there's a lot of conflicting information doubt their food choices as a result. But what could be driving all this conflicting information and doubt? Friends and family members are one of the most heavily relied upon sources of information, yet other sources, like health professionals and registered dietitians, are much more highly trusted. Chances are Americans are getting different advice from these sources, and it could be leading to a lot of conflicting information. Our 2017 health survey results also highlighted the need for clear and direct nutrition education on a number of topics. We know consumers are getting information on what to eat and avoid from a variety of sources, but the fact that more than half of Americans could not link their most desired health benefit with specific nutrients shows that this information might not be helping Americans actually meet their health goals. Clearly, Americans are hungry for information on which foods to eat and which foods to avoid to meet their health goals. As health professionals, we are uniquely positioned to meet this need for actionable advice on how to get the health benefits consumers want from foods. And that's not the only area where health professionals can help clear up the often murky nutrition information landscape. Consumers also show a lack of understanding around the definition of processed foods. Also, the high degree of uncertainty and lack of knowledge around GMOs highlights an important opportunity for health professionals to provide clear guidance based on scientific consensus. Last but not least, we know that consumers determine a product's healthfulness by way more than just the nutrition facts panels. Factors like form, the ingredients list, and even place of purchase can affect the perceived healthfulness of a food or beverage. Today, we discussed the vast array of information that makes up today's food information landscape. Over its 11-year lifespan, the Food and Health Survey has also become part of that landscape. For example, you may have heard about the Food and Health Survey on a variety of websites or news channels, as you can see here. The survey covers a variety of topics that are media relevant and has been covered on several popular sites, including CNN Health, Outside Magazine, and the Food Network. Also, local and national radio stations, including SiriusXM, have covered the survey in interviews on health-related shows. Don't forget to subscribe to the Food Insight newsletter to keep up to date on the latest on the Food and Health Survey and other new IFIC resources. Though we covered the breadth of the general population findings from the 2017 Food and Health Survey today, there are several other analyses of data available publicly on our website, foodinsight.org. This summer, we released an analysis of the food decision profiles based on information from the 2017 Food and Health Survey. This profile analysis helps us understand how different groups of consumers think about and purchase food beyond traditional demographics like age, gender, income, or race. The report gives a breakdown of 6 distinct consumer groups or profiles. These include pleasure shoppers, diligent searchers, product selectors, unbiased buyers, indifferent consumers, and last but not least, foodies. Foodies are particularly interesting in how they approach food and nutrition. The analysis found that foodies tend to be more confident in their nutrition know-how, that foodies will sacrifice cost and convenience to get foods that align with their values, and even that foodies define healthy differently than other consumer profiles. You can find out more foodie facts and learn more about the other profiles at foodinsight.org/FHS-foodies. Also, don't forget about our age 50 to 80 oversample in collaboration with the AARP Foundation. This full report on older adults, with a special focus on low-income older Americans, is available at the link on your screen. Expect to see more detail about this report on Food Insight during the month of September, in honor of Healthy Aging Month. We'll be updating our site with new research findings from Food and Health, among other projects, throughout the year. Many of these surveys will have findings that are of specific interest to health professionals, so be sure to stay tuned. We hope you enjoyed the 2017 Food and Health Survey Health Professional Webcast. If you're a registered dietitian or a dietetic technician registered, you can receive 1 continuing education credit for completing this module. Just follow the steps on the webpage below to register. Take the short quiz and download your certificate. If you want more information on the survey or on our special report on Americans ages 50 to 80, go to foodinsight.org/FHS.